Hi, everyone, and welcome to Blind Woman Reviews. Happy Thursday, good evening. This is a series where a totally blind woman reviews mainly fiction, but so far reviews. Um, so, I'm here to review The Wicked King, which is a sequel to The Cruel Prince, and it's the second book in the Folk of the Air trilogy. This book is pretty much a sequel, so I will do my best not to spoil the first book. But if I do head into spoilers, I will let you know. But anyway, this book basically follows the events of after the ending. It takes place 5 months after the ending of The Cruel Prince. And in order to protect her younger brother, Jude becomes the power behind the throne. So what she does is she becomes the power behind the throne, but Cardan does everything he can to undermine her. And from there, we have a couple of intrigues, including a lovely mystery, which causes some trouble in the end. Overall, this book, well written. I do like it. The writing style is fine, very similar to the first. Of course, we are in Jude's head. And we got an interesting prologue, which I like. So far, the books have had prologues, and I think that's awesome. So I really like the fact that there's a prologue there because it just makes it. I don't know. I really like prologues. I really think prologues are awesome. So I like that there's a prologue in this book, and I really I love it. So the characters here they're fine. They're kind of the same of the first book, um and there's a lot of political intrigue. We didn't really get more world building, really. The world kind of, well, we got like a teeny tiny bit of world building, but we didn't get like a lot of world building like I would hope. So this is actually a really good beginner fantasy. The Folk of the Air is a really good beginner fantasy if you really are just starting out fantasy, because it's not a high or epic fantasy. It's not as detailed as a high or epic fantasy. It's just there. You can definitely take read this fantasy and not feel overwhelmed by the details of the world building. However, if you do like very detailed world building, you could always read more high fantasy. But this is not the high and epic fantasy. This is a good fantasy for beginners. I just wanted to mention that. So I find that that this book was actually very well built, and I would have loved more world building, but we got a little bit at least. And the character dynamics are definitely very interesting. I love that this book takes place in the palace, and that we get to kind of see how the palace runs and everything. Of course, we're stuck in Jude's head, which means certain characters don't get as much development, and we only get to see them through her eyes. But then again, that's the sacrifice you kind of make when you write in first person in only one point of view. You are stuck in that person's head the entire time, so that makes it so all the other characters are kind of somewhat like left out of the development. There is also a romantic subplot here. It did sort of, like, it was foreshadowed a little bit in the first book, and there is a romantic subplot between Cardan and Jude. I will say this, however, I would have taken a star for this, but I did not. But it was kind of foreshadowed in the first book that it was gonna be like an enemies to lovers trope romance, which I love, for the record. Honestly, enemies to lovers is literally one of my favorite romantic tropes. I really started loving it when I was reading Red, White, and Royal Blue for the first time. I think enemies to lovers is one of the best romantic tropes I've ever pretty much read. So I like that I can that this would be that trope. I will say, however, that this romance kind of fades into the background in this book. It doesn't, even though it's a bit of a subplot or a bit of a part of the book, it kind of fades into the background a little bit. You don't really get to to see that romance flourish too much. It develops a little bit, but not a lot, because it fades into the background, and it's not as well developed as I would have hoped the romance was. So it fades into the background. It kind of reminds me of, if you've watched Winx Club, season 2 specifically, it reminds me of season 2, where the romance is like where the romance is very where the romance kind of just fades in. Not the romance, I'm sorry, the plot itself fades into the background, and there's like a bunch of self-contained stories. So it's kind of like the romance is self-contained, but barely. So it barely passes as a romance, but I do believe, even though it's not very well developed, that it can be a romance, because the chemistry between both characters works out perfectly, and it's very, very interesting to see their dynamic and their chemistry. So even though it was not very well developed, I do see the prospect of romance in the air with these characters, and I think it was actually done pretty well. Well, not done pretty well, I'm sorry, but like, if like the chemistry, at least, that it, like, the believe the you know, the believability that this is a romance, I think it was very well executed, that part, because I believe it can actually be a romance, and that's saying a lot. So I like the court intrigue. I think the character dynamics are fun, and I loved the cliffhanger at the end that led to the third book. So if you want to find out more about that, I'll definitely be reviewing the last book, The Queen of Nothing, tomorrow, because I actually finished it. Finished it way before I filmed this review. So let me know in the comment section your thoughts of The Cruel Prince. If you want to hear my thoughts on The Cruel Prince, check out that video, which will be linked in the description, and you can also find it in my Blind Woman Reviews page. I do need to start creating a playlist for The Cruel Prince, which I'll be doing that soon. But yes, if you want to see my thoughts on The Cruel Prince, check out the link in the description. If you are interested in watching reactions, I will link my Blind Woman Reacts playlist. And yeah, feel free to follow me on my social media as well, which will be linked in the description. And I'll see you tomorrow for another video. Bye.
Voiceover unmuted. 0 show captured device. Stop recording. 0%. Stop recording. Character palette. Close button. You are 0%. Stop recording.